Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to start off a new series that we're going to refer to as our Parse demo. Now, the intention behind this video is sort of to introduce you to the topic of what we're going to be trying to cover in this video, as well as a little bit of background on a couple of different techniques we're going to be looking at. First, before we jump into any of our Java code, and by the way, some of the principles that we look at in this video series won't be exclusive to Java, but can be used in other languages such as C# or even in MATLAB. But to begin with, what we want to do is we want to talk about the concept of what we're looking at. The idea is that perhaps you're given some text, maybe an article from a Wikipedia page, and you're interested in finding character sequences that match a pattern. And what I mean by a pattern is not a specific value. For instance, it's easy to look for a specific name or a specific string, but instead what we want to do is we want to think in terms of patterns. For instance, an email address follows a pattern. Imagine for just a second if I set up a slideshow in front of you and just ask you to quickly respond in less than a second whether you thought a particular string of characters or a particular string was an email address. Well, we're pretty much in touch with what looks like an email address. Well, it doesn't really matter what the specific email address is, but you're sort of in touch with the pattern or in tune with the pattern. And it turns out that humans are actually fairly decent at recognizing patterns. The goal here in this particular series is to look at all different types of patterns and how they can be useful in transmitting and receiving data for the purposes of an application. So there's going to be two classes that we will find very useful in our Java framework for doing this. And I just want us to take a second to bookmark these and take a quick look at them. And the first one is going to be the Java string class. Now, there are other ways of parsing data. You can look at numeric sequences as well. However, though, for the purposes of this video series, we're probably going to focus primarily on strings. And I want to draw your attention to certain methods associated with the strings that you might find useful. And you could see down here, for instance, you've got the ability, and you may have already used it, to split a string based on a value. And perhaps in earlier videos that you might have seen, you saw that I can use the string split to be able to split a string based on a comma or some other delimiter. Now, we're going to dive deeper into this, but there are some additional methods that we can also find useful. There is the replace and the replace all that does something very similar. And you can see that there's also ways of finding, for instance, the index of a particular character. And then effectively what that does is that helps us find a particular pattern. It might be as simple as just essentially separating out data based on a delimiter, but also looking for a particular character in hopes of establishing a pattern. If I go back to the email address example, you'll recall that an email address must have at least, or actually more specific, exactly one ampersand in the address. And so what you would do is you would search a string for that ampersand, and essentially that would be the first step in validating that string as an email address. Now, we're not going to go into the details of any particular pattern in this video. Instead, what we're going to do is focus more on the bigger picture, but there are other types of strings or data that you might be interested in looking for. And some great examples that come to mind are email addresses, of course, phone numbers, IP addresses, MAC addresses, things that have a fairly consistent pattern to them. And another one that you'll see in a later video is going to be the ability to scrape out a URL or a web address off of a web page. I'd like to show you, for instance, how to be able to discover all of the Wikipedia links in a Wikipedia article. The other class that we're going to be interested in looking at is going to be the regular expression or regex pattern class. This is actually going to be a couple of classes that we're going to look at, but again, this is the one that I would like for you to go ahead and bookmark and at least get some preliminary understanding about it. The idea here is with the pattern class is that you can actually establish the pattern for what you're looking for. So again, in terms of the email address, there's a certain pattern associated with it. It's a combination of characters and numbers followed by an ampersand, and then followed by another series of characters and numbers with at least one period. We'll go into some of the deeper rules related to an email address in a later video, but what we could see here is there are ways, for instance, to be able to identify a digit from 0 to 9 without specifying that we're looking for an exact number. In other words, we aren't just looking for the number 0. We can be looking for any number 0 to 9. And then you'll notice that there's some other character classes that might not be so counterintuitive, or excuse me, might be not so intuitive. And the idea is that we can also look at things that are not a digit. And again, we'll go into some of the rules in later videos. But the idea here is you want to look for patterns, and you have then this special character class, or meta characters, if you would, that will help us then identify a particular sequence of values, regardless of what those specific values are. Again, for this video, I just encourage you to take a second to look through these. We'll talk a lot more about these in later videos, but you also can see that you have the ability to control then the number of a particular type of character that you're looking for. So if we go with the earlier example of the /D for a digit, then we can simply control how many of them we find. So in other words, if we use the quantifier after the /D of the question mark, that means it's going to be once or not at all. In other words, 0 or 1 times. And then we have 0 or more times. And then the third possibility is then going to be 1 or more times. You can see, again, there's going to be multiple quantifiers, including whether or not they're greedy and reluctant. We'll talk more about those again in later videos. Big picture view is we're looking at patterns that we can extract from a string or from a body of text. So let's go ahead and get started on setting up this particular demo. Now, you can go ahead and include this in your fundamentals demo, although I'm going to go ahead and break this out as a separate project. The reason for that being is I anticipate this having a lot of different applications. And so I want to sort of have this then as a separate project, just because I expect to be adding a lot of videos to this particular project. Either way, the process is going to be effectively the same, and you'll be able to follow along either way. But we're going to go here to a new project. I'm going to go ahead and create a Java with Ant application. And I'm going to go ahead and call this one my ParseDemo. I am going to go ahead and ask for it to create a main class, although I am going to go ahead and put it in its own package of EE333. You can also use beta or any other package name that you would like. And just make sure to pay attention for the project location, that you're happy with it. And at this point, we can just simply click Finish. And all I'm going to do is just take a second to clean this up. Sorry about that. It popped up off screen here. I'm going to clean up this. Again, I encourage you to go into the template in NetBeans if you don't like what they add, and customize it for your own use. And what we'll do here is then we'll just set up our main real quick in this video. Again, you've probably seen me do this in earlier videos. I just want to do it one more time so we've got a good solid starting point for this series. And we'll start off with setting up our int index, and then a for loop that allows for us to loop from index equals to 0, index less than our arg count using our args.length, and then finally index plus plus. And then I simply want to display using a system.out.println a given argument. Again, this just helps us with setting up our project here. So our args, square brackets, and then whatever index we're looking at, followed by, again, a nice reformatted text here. And we simply then display whatever that particular argument is. And then probably the last thing that I want to do, again, just to get us off to a nice start here, is just to go ahead and display the argument count itself, again, so that you sort of know what you're starting off with here. In this case, it's going to be our args.length. I'm going to go ahead and build this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and pop open a new command window. Build was successful. I'm going to CD to my documents, courses, EE333, projects, and then my ParseDemo. And then if I do a dir, you can see there are the folders associated with the NetBeans project, and I'm interested in the build directory. Again, there are my classes. And you can see there's our EE333 or whatever package name you used. At this point, then, just to make sure that we have everything working the way we expect it to, we're just going to call our EE333.ParseDemo. And sure enough, we get the count of 0. And then we'll just put something after it. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and get us started down the road of setting up a demo. And sure enough, we can pass that argument of demo. And then before we leave this, let's just take a second to check this. So if we say our args.length is equal to 0, then in this case, we probably ought to be calling our help that we will set up. Else if our args.length is equal to 1, and I'm going to make this one a compound condition because the idea here is I want to check not only that the length is 1, but that 0th argument matches, using equals ignore case, my /demo switch. Again, it just depends on you how you want to set this up. And wrong language here. There we go. Oh, I seem to have some mismatched parentheses. There we go. And in this case, then we will set this up to call whatever function we are currently testing. And that's about it for this particular video. Let's go ahead and build it one more time. We'll go ahead and run it. And we don't really have any noise here. So I'll tell you what, let's take one extra step here and just go ahead and put another system.out.println line here. And just to indicate that we are in this case, excuse me, calling our demo function. And there we go. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you for watching.